There are men who study danger from a safe distance, content to observe the world's most fearsome creatures through the protective glass of science and careful observation. And then there is Jeremy Wade. For more than 3 decades, this British biologist and extreme angler has done something that most rational human beings would never consider. He has climbed into the same water as the things that terrify entire communities. He has lowered himself into rivers so dark and deep that sunlight has never once kissed their bottom. He has waded into currents where local fishermen refuse to go, where mothers warn their children to stay far from the banks, and where entire villages have built their folklore around something lurking just beneath the surface. Jeremy Wade has come face to face with creatures that most people only see in nightmares. He has held giant catfish powerful enough to drag a grown man under. He has reached into waters where piranhas circle. He has studied electric eels that carry enough voltage to stop a human heart. And yet, through all of it, through every trembling current, every murky plunge, every close encounter, he maintained a kind of calm that seemed almost impossible for a normal person to sustain. He studied. He observed. He moved on to the next river. But then something changed. There came a moment in Jeremy Wade's long career when he could no longer simply observe and move on. There was one creature, one encounter, one discovery beneath the water surface that stopped him cold, not just as a scientist, but as a human being. It was something that forced him to speak out in a way he had never done before, something that rewired how he understood danger, fear, and the hidden world beneath every river he had ever crossed. Today, we're going to explore that story. We are going to go beneath the surface and examine not just the creature itself, but the deeper truth that Jeremy Wade uncovered after a lifetime of swimming with monsters. To understand why this particular encounter mattered so much, you first have to understand the world Jeremy Wade has built his life inside. Rivers are not gentle things. They have personalities. They carry histories. The Amazon, for instance, is not simply a river. It is a living maze of interconnected waterways stretching across millions of square miles of rainforest, hiding thousands of species that science has not yet formally named. The Congo River in Africa plunges deeper than any river on Earth, its currents so powerful and its depths so extreme that researchers still do not fully understand what lives inside it. Rivers in Southeast Asia carry their own ancient mysteries, their brown and silted waters concealing animals that have survived for millions of years without ever needing to evolve, because nothing in their environment has ever been threatening enough to force a change. Jeremy Wade has spent his career crossing all of these places. He is not a thrill seeker in the conventional sense. He carries a degree in zoology. He thinks scientifically. When local communities tell him stories of river monsters and disappearing fishermen, he does not laugh and he does not panic. He listens carefully, takes notes, and begins building a picture, one detail at a time, of what might actually be happening beneath the water. His method is patient, disciplined, and deeply respectful of both the science and the communities he works within. He has always believed that behind every terrifying story, there is a real animal, and behind every real animal, there is an explanation rooted in biology and survival. This belief has guided him through some of the most dangerous fieldwork any naturalist has ever attempted. He has documented the Gunch catfish in India's Kali River, a monstrous bottom-feeding predator that locals believed was responsible for pulling bathers to their deaths. He investigated the Wells catfish of Europe, a species that can grow to extraordinary lengths and that has been found with human remains in its stomach. He tracked the arapaima in the Amazon, a prehistoric giant capable of breathing air and growing to the size of a small boat. Each of these investigations added a new chapter to his understanding of freshwater danger. Each one reinforced his core belief that nature is not cruel. It is simply efficient. But efficiency, when it is pointed at a human being in dark water, can feel indistinguishable from evil. Before we arrive at the encounter that changed everything, it is worth pausing to understand the creatures that shaped Jeremy Wade's perspective across the years leading up to it. Because the thing about Jeremy Wade is that he had already seen so much by the time this particular discovery came along. He was not a novice. He was not someone who could be easily rattled. He had stared down enough danger in enough rivers to fill several lifetimes of nightmares. So when something finally managed to stay with him, when something finally left a mark that he could not shake off, The weight of that says everything. Consider the Goliath tigerfish of the Congo River. This is an animal that seems almost designed by nature to embody raw, unapologetic aggression. Its body is streamlined and muscular, built for explosive acceleration through dark water. Its mouth is filled with teeth that look less like the teeth of a fish and more like a set of interlocking knives, each one perfectly shaped for gripping and tearing through flesh. What makes the Goliath tigerfish especially unnerving is not just its physical design, but its behavior. It does not wait. It does not hide. It charges. It hunts in the open water with a kind of predatory confidence that suggests it has never, in the entire history of its species, had a reason to fear anything sharing its river. Jeremy has described encounters with this fish as some of the most genuinely alarming moments of his field career, and that is saying something substantial for a man who has faced as many dangers as he has. Then there is the electric eel, a creature that breaks almost every assumption a person brings to the idea of a river predator. It carries no claws. Its teeth are not impressive. Its body, long and dark and slightly sluggish-looking, does not immediately suggest danger. And yet inside that body, the electric eel contains a biological weapon of truly remarkable sophistication. Specialized organs running the length of its body generate and store electrical energy, which the eel can discharge in concentrated bursts reaching up to 650 volts. In the water, where the human body is fully submerged and completely conductive, that kind of electrical discharge does not just sting. It can stop muscles. It can cause temporary paralysis. It can drop a person face first into a river with no ability to right themselves or swim. The eel does not chase. It does not bite. It simply releases its energy into the water, and the water does the rest. The invisibility of that attack, the fact that you can be incapacitated by something you cannot see, hear, or in many cases even locate, creates a very specific and deeply unsettling variety of fear. And then there's the kangaroo, small enough to be missed entirely if you are not looking for it. This parasitic fish from the Amazon represents a kind of fear that operates on a completely different frequency from the fear generated by a large predator. The kangaroo does not need size. It does not need strength or speed. It survives by locating and entering the gill cavities of larger fish, feeding on blood in a darkness that offers it perfect cover. The rare and extreme reports involving human beings, accounts that have spread across generations of Amazonian communities and eventually into scientific literature, describe an invasion so intimate and so deeply personal that the psychological reaction it triggers goes far beyond what the animal's tiny size would seem to warrant. Jeremy has always approached these reports carefully, separating verified biology from fear-amplified storytelling. But even within the boundaries of verified science, the kangaroo earns its reputation. It represents a fear of something entering the body, a fear of losing control over your own physical boundaries. That kind of fear has a different texture than the fear of being chased or bitten, and it leaves a different kind of mark. Jeremy Wade had faced all of these creatures. He had documented them, studied them, and in many cases gotten close enough to observe them firsthand. He had processed the fear each one generated and transformed it, through science and understanding, into something manageable. He had always been able to find the biology underneath the nightmare. He had always been able to see the creature behind the monster. The investigation began, as so many of Jeremy's most significant cases have, with a story that did not quite make sense. It came from a remote community located beside a river that had, for years, been the source of growing fear among local people. The reports filtering out of this community were not simple accounts of large fish or aggressive predators. They were stranger than that, more unsettling. People were describing encounters in the water that left no obvious wound, no visible mark, and no clear explanation. Swimmers had been found incapacitated on riverbanks. Fishermen had returned from the water in states of confusion and physical distress that they could not articulate. In some cases, people simply did not return at all. What Jeremy found when he began his investigation was not a single dramatic predator. It was something far more complex and, in many ways, far more disturbing. Because the more he studied the situation, the more he examined the patterns, the environments, the timing, and the nature of the injuries and disappearances, the more he began to understand something that went far beyond the biology of any single fish. He began to understand the way multiple dangers can combine in dark water to create something that operates almost like a system. A river is not simply a habitat. It is a layered environment where dozens of threats can exist simultaneously, invisible to each other and invisible to the humans who enter the water without knowing what lives alongside them. The electric eel's ability to discharge invisible energy through water. The stonefish's capacity to deliver agonizing venom through a single moment of accidental contact. The kangaroo's parasitic behavior. The explosive aggression of large predatory fish. None of these creatures were conspiring. None of them had any awareness of each other or of the humans moving through their environment. And yet, when Jeremy examined the full picture of what was happening in these rivers, he saw something that no individual creature could fully explain. He saw how the combination of invisible dangers, layered one on top of another in dark and murky water, could transform a river into something that functioned almost like a trap. Not a designed trap, not an intentional one, but a trap nonetheless, built by millions of years of independent evolution, operating with a terrible and completely impersonal efficiency. This is the discovery that stayed with him. Not a single monster, not one supreme predator to point to and name, but the realization that rivers themselves, in their natural complexity, represent a kind of danger that no amount of individual bravery or preparation can fully account for. You can know about the electric eel and still not feel it coming. You can know about the stonefish and still not see it beneath your feet. You can understand the biology of the kangaroo and still feel the deep psychological weight of what it represents. Knowledge helps. Knowledge protects. But knowledge has limits in dark water, and those limits are where the real fear lives. Here is the part of Jeremy Wade's story that separates him from the average explorer, and that transforms his decades of river investigation into something more than an adventure series. After everything he has witnessed, after all the creatures he has documented, all the dangers he has faced, all the communities whose stories he has carefully listened to and investigated, he arrived at a conclusion that is both deeply scientific and quietly philosophical. Evil, as human beings understand the concept, does not exist in nature. It cannot exist there. Evil requires intention. It requires the deliberate choice to cause harm. And no creature in any river, no matter how dangerous, operates on intention in that sense. The electric eel is not cruel. The stonefish is not malicious. The Goliath tigerfish is not angry. Each of these animals is doing exactly what millions of years of evolution have shaped them to do, in exactly the environment they were shaped to do it in. Their danger is not a moral quality. It is a biological one. It is the product of survival pressures that have nothing to do with human beings and that were operating long before human beings ever approached a riverbank. What makes this conclusion so powerful is that it does not diminish the fear. Jeremy Wade is not saying that rivers are safe or that their inhabitants are misunderstood in a way that should make us less cautious. He is saying something more nuanced and more honest than that. He is saying that fear is a legitimate and rational response to genuine danger, but that the framework we use to understand that danger matters enormously. When we call a creature evil, we are projecting a human category onto something that operates in a completely different register, and that projection, while emotionally satisfying, actually makes us less capable of understanding what we are dealing with. It replaces accurate knowledge with dramatic mythology, and in dark water, mythology can get you killed. The creature that Jeremy Wade ultimately describes as the most disturbing he has ever encountered is not terrifying because it is evil. It is terrifying because it is perfectly designed, because it operates in conditions that are already profoundly hostile to human awareness and control, because it can affect you without touching you, or blend so completely into its environment that it becomes part of the ground you stand on, or represent a threat so psychologically intimate that the size of the animal almost becomes irrelevant. The fear it generates is not the product of aggression or malice. It is the product of a mismatch, a collision between an animal perfectly adapted to its world and a human being who has entered that world without fully understanding its rules. Jeremy Wade has spent more time in the world's most dangerous rivers than perhaps any other human being alive. He has done this not out of recklessness, not out of a need for spectacle, but out of a genuine and disciplined desire to understand. to find the truth behind the stories, to separate the monster from the biology and the fear from the fact. And what he has found, after all those years and all those rivers and all those encounters, is something that is in its own way more frightening than any single creature could be. He has found that rivers are complex, layered, and deeply indifferent to human presence, that the dangers within them are not arranged for our benefit or organized around our capacity to understand them, that they operate according to rules shaped over timescales that dwarf human history, in environments where we are, at best, temporary visitors with incomplete knowledge and limited senses, that the most dangerous moment in any river is not necessarily the one where you see something large moving toward you. It might be the moment when the water is still and the surface is calm and everything appears, for a few peaceful seconds, to be perfectly safe. Jeremy Wade knows better than almost anyone alive what lies beneath that calm surface, and the fact that he keeps going back, that he keeps lowering himself into those dark and complicated waters, might be the most telling thing of all, because understanding something does not make it less dangerous, but it does make the danger honest. And in Jeremy Wade's world, honest danger is the only kind he has ever known how to face.